All right, we are going to keep on keeping on with our making our project responsive, and I am going to work on this pesky projects page. Okay, as you can see, it's not great. All right, so we need to brainstorm and figure out a way to make this look good even on a phone. So I am going to close out of my back end. I was doing some troubleshooting. I accidentally reset my password and I couldn't remember what I reset my password to be. So I was trying to make sure I knew what was going on. Okay, so we are going to be looking at the projects page. I don't think we're going to be on this component specifically. I think we're mostly going to be looking at project box. So we're going to go into here. Okay, so I just want to get a good understanding of what's happening. So it's a row, like a display flex box, which is going to be row. Okay, so what I'm kind of thinking is as the screen gets smaller, I'm thinking that I will want to go from row to column. So I think it's about finding that break point, okay? But I also need to add some testing in terms of a long project description to figure out what that looks like. So I'm going to go to a lorem ipsum generator and I'm going to get a pretty long description so that way I have a good idea of what I'm looking at. So we'll do project F, let's paste in our description and let's create the project. All right, so we did do the ellipses, so that's going to be the longest project, and then you can see that at least that is going to kind of start going, but there is a definite break point where it stops. Okay, so it looks like the roundest number we can do is 700, so that's where we're going to start. All right, so I'm going to copy this code so I don't have to keep rewriting it, and I'm going to paste it in here, and I'm going to change this from 800 to 700 because that is where I want my breakpoint to be. All right, then I'm going to go back to my React app and I'm going to make that my breakpoint. You can actually kind of see though that we have the in progress is starting to be an issue that I didn't notice. So I'm actually going to make that my breakpoint instead. So that looks like that is at 8:30. Let's see if we can get done 8:25 before it does it. All right, so we're going to make that 8:25 actually. That's going to be our breakpoint. Okay. And then I'm just going to play around with it and see what happens. So let's do flex direction. Okay, we're going to say is larger than 825. We will keep at a row. Otherwise, we will switch to a column. Now, I don't know if that's going to look good and that's going to be the solution, but that's where I think I'm going to start with it. So we go down to 824 and you can see that that's what happens in terms of breakpoint. Okay, but now we can see that as it goes down smaller, we're having more issues. So we're gonna have to do more in terms of responsive design. I will say our editor for our little accordion for adding a project still kind of looks good. Okay, so I think that going to the column is going to be our best solution, but I just think that we have more things that we need to do. Okay, so now we have this width 15. Okay, so I think that needs a breakpoint too. So I'm going to say is larger than 825. We'll make it 15%. Otherwise, let's just make it 100%. All right, that looks good. I'm going to add that same code to my project status. Okay, that looks good. So it looks like we don't have a gap in between our individual things when it's all a row, and that's okay. But I think when it's a column, I do want it to have a gap. So if it's larger than 825, then my gap will be 0. If it's smaller than 825, I'm going to try a gap of 4 and see how that looks. Okay, that looks better. All right, here is now where it gets a little bit tricky. So I'm actually going to go a lot smaller and see what it looks like. Okay, so I was going to try to see if I could add my status up next to my project name, but I think if we're getting on a phone, that's going to look bad. Yeah, so I don't think I want to do that. I do think what I want to do though is I want to switch the order because I think I want my status to be right underneath the name. So I'm going to have to look up the CSS to do that. And then I'm also a little bit confused as to this gap here. So I think I'm going to start with the gap. So we have a margin left is going to be 10. Okay, so that's going to be why our gap is happening. So we're going to say if it's larger than 825, we'll have that. Otherwise, we'll have 0. Okay, that looks better. I'm not sure that we necessarily need to have the description cut off, because if we have it in a column, we don't have to. So I'm going to try making that not cut off. Let's say 100. Yeah, I mean, I actually think that looks kind of nice to see the whole thing. Okay, so that's looking good. Okay, I think I might want to have the project name bold if it's large. So I'm going to say font weight is larger than 825. We're going to just have normal, which I don't know if this does get bold or not. Otherwise, we want to do bold. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, I like it. Okay, so let's go to the Galaxy because that's our smallest of the phone. All right, that definitely is looking a little tight. So I think what we want to do is we want to take care of the margin around the whole side. And I think that, yeah, that's going to be around here. Okay, so we're going to have to add another media query to a component above. So we're just copy it. Let's import the use media query hook. And I'm going to say is larger than 825. We'll do 10. Otherwise, let's try 4. All right, yeah, that already looks better to me. Okay. But I think I'm going to say margin X 4 and then margin Y. Let's keep it with 10. Yeah, that looks good. Perfect. Okay, so then the next thing that we want to do is we want to try to switch our status and our description. So our status goes up higher. Trying to think, or do we just want to, I kind of feel like I want something here and I want either like a check. I'm curious if I can find an icon that I would like for this. So I feel like check for done makes sense, right? But like what would an in progress icon look like? Not sure. Okay, so let's do CSS order, CSS flex order. All right, so here is an article on ordering flex items. So I see that we have column reverse, but it's not exactly what we want. All right, so we do have an order property, so let's play around with that. Okay, so let's do order 1. Let's do order 3. Let's do order 2. And now this is gonna break it on like non-responsive, right? So if we go to Nest Hub, now this is in the wrong spot, right? But I just wanted to check if it works. And it does work. Okay, so now what I want to see is we can there's just something about me that wants to put it up here, but I feel like I'm just being too extra with this. All right, let's look at like status icon. A progress bar would be cool there, but now we're just getting crazy. Okay, I think I'm gonna just leave it. It's gonna be fine, Callie. But okay, that's gonna be our order, right? So we're gonna say, we just have to do this here. Is larger than 825. We're gonna have it be 2, otherwise be 3. And then we're gonna say is larger than 825. We want it to be 3, otherwise be 2. Okay, so that looks good on small. Now let's go and look at it on something big, and that looks good too. All right, and you can see it when it's on a tiny phone and when it comes out. Also though, what happened to my project? Oh, there's my project F. So that looks good. Still looks good. All right, so now let's look at our, I feel like that looks, I'm gonna go to an iPhone. That looks good. All right. I don't love that my header is now smaller than this, but I think if I'm going to update my headers on my pages, I'm gonna do it all at once. So I'm not gonna worry about it in this specific video. So now let's go ahead and just take a little preview. You can see that we are going to have, our main issue is going to come with this individual project page, because you can see on a phone, it looks real bad, okay? So that is where we're gonna move on to next. We're gonna move back to our project. We're gonna move back to our individual project page and clean that up. But if you look at everything else, we're really starting to look good on all screens. All right, I'll see you in the next video.